Despite it no longer being spooky month, today we're doing another round of Phobias as Demons. Right now, lots of my lovely subscribers are designing their own Christmas demons for this month's PopCross Community Redraw episode, and I figured I should do at least one more Phobias as Demons episode before we get, to the Christmas Demons episode. So once again, I've gone through the comment section of the previous episode in this series, pulled a bunch of the most popular or my favorite suggestions, and today I'll be turning those into demons. Thank you so much for the suggestions, everyone. Let's see what you all thought would make some good demons. Let's go. Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show. Every time your hairs stand on end, every time your heart thumps faster at a bump in the night, every time your breathing shallows as you ready to run from a perceived threat, you give off a scent that is unimaginably alluring to a demon. They crave fear like your lungs crave oxygen, and like there are different flavors of food, there are many distinct flavors of fear, and different demons crave different tastes. Nyctos of the Shadows is possibly the most well-fed of demons, as the flavor it seeks can be found in some small way in near every being on the planet. For no matter how brave or courageous you are, we all feel slightly more vulnerable and threatened when our vision is warped and obscured by the dark. It's very easy for our minds to play tricks on us when our senses are failing, and Nyctos preys on those in this state with a malicious lust to torment and to feed. It is a demon made from slimy blackness. Its body can harden and liquefy in a blink, and it can quickly sink away into any shadow available. When it senses prey with a particularly strong fear of the dark, it'll find them and spend a few days hidden from sight, but making the lighting in their home flicker and die at random, stirring up the initial fear. Once Nyctos feels ready for its real game to begin, it'll awaken its prey in the night by emitting a hissing sound long enough to wake them and force them to look around for the cause. It'll then slowly emerge its bubbly, slimy body from the densest shadow in the room and slowly come into full sight. Soon after, it'll hurl a piece of its own flesh at the person's eyes. It temporarily blinds them as Nyctos spreads its mass all around the room to make it almost pitch black. Almost being the key word. See, there is a slight sense of calm to be had in complete blackness, but it's the slightest flecks of light that seep through the dark to reveal shifting, moving, unusual shapes that causes true terror. So, when its victim has cleared their vision, Nyctos will allow fleeting spurts of purple light to reveal where it is, as its mask-like face appears rapidly in different areas of the room. Bubbling and hissing sounds will emit all around the person as Nyctos torments them for hours, before sinking away into a shadow and vanishing. The terror will stew in its victim as they try to convince others the next day of what has happened to them, to little effect. Maybe they'll move or sleep at a friend's home the next night, but wherever they go, Nyctos will find them again, and once more enact its torture. Night after night it'll return, sometimes skipping an eve, to give them a false sense of hope that it's gone. But inevitably, Nyctos will return, and once it's had its fun, it will finally feast on the poor, fear-drenched meal. Now this one I was really excited to do because I had to be a little bit more conceptual with it, because in previous episodes with fear of dogs or fear of snakes, I do a scary looking dog, I do a scary looking snake, but with dark, there's not as much to go off of. So the idea that I went with was a demon that had a really amorphous body that could ooze out of shadows. And I think that was a really cool angle for this one because first of all, it meant I could go wild with the proportions, which is one of the things I've been doing a lot in this series, but I could push it even more with this demon. And it meant I was introducing a new kind of texture. All of the demons so far have had very rocky, grainy kind of skin, and I like the consistency of that, so they all look like they exist in the same world and are the same kinds of creatures despite being shape-wise very different. But I also really like this idea of introducing a new sort of texture, and I play with it a lot more in some of the other demons later on in this episode. Really happy with how this one turned out. Hope you all like it as well. Here's our Nyctophobia Demon. For many, clowns are merely a childlike form of entertainment. For some, the word itself is simply a term used as a throwaway insult for, say, a boss or higher-up one dislikes. But to some, even hearing reference to a clown can spark waves of terror. Something about a being disguised by both makeup and a comically fake smile understandably spurs inherent distrust and fear in these people. Unfortunately, that makes them the perfect targets for Coulrophobia. It's still unclear which came first, this demon or the colorful clad entertainers it resembles, but either way, it's not hard to see how this demon could have struck fear into many, even prior to a fear of clowns becoming common. This ghoulish being is close to human in stature, but it's also off in many unnerving ways. Its head, hands, and feet are all far too large for its body, and it has an impossibly large grin that can jut with dagger-like fangs. Its limbs are also rubbery and bend in unnatural ways, as though it has no bones. Coulrophobia can shift its body to temporarily appear like a regular human clown, and it will often walk down busy city streets this way to feel for the reaction it seeks. Many will give it strange looks and be on their way, but it often won't be long before it picks up the scent of a person who's just been struck with fear at the sight of Coulrophobia. It will then track that person to wherever it is they live and wait until the night. Once they're asleep, the demon will transport them to its lair, a run-down old funhouse with rotting wood and cracked mirrors. The victim will awaken to the sound of heinous chuckling before Coulrophobia will begin its games. None so far have lived to tell the tale of what goes on in that not-so-fun funhouse, but it's easy to imagine that for one with an intense fear of clowns, the torment is unbearable. Now, for fear of clowns, I was a little bit hesitant to do this one because it's just been done so many times. Like, immediately I thought of Pennywise or any other freaky monster clown, and I just thought, is there anything really original that I'm going to be able to bring to this? But once I sat with it for a few minutes, I was like, you know what? It might not be my most original drawing, but I do have some good ideas for how this could go. So one of the things I started in with was when I was doing the very initial rough drawing, I drew it as though I was doing a really goofy cartoon, like more rubbery kinds of limbs, as I said in the lore, really pushing the proportions, gigantic feet, huge grin, and then with those really cartoony, goofy proportions, then I start working in the monstrous textures and the creepy elements and dripping blood and fangs, and that combination of the cartoony body with the creepy textures I think just works so well. I've been trying to make a lot of my poses feel like they flow a little bit better in all of my episodes in the last little while, and I think doing something that was intended to start off a little bit more cartoony actually kind of helped me see that I can push that more in my other drawings. This drawing, it just feels like it has a really nice flow to it. Everything about this one, I love how it ends up turning out. And I do add a little bit of the goopy sort of texture for its arms and legs, and just below its feet. I don't really know what inspired that for this character specifically, I just wanted to play with that a little bit more, and I think it is a nice element. Super happy with this one, and I hope you all are as well. Hope you're not afraid of clowns, because let's take a look at Coulrophobia. Having a fear of birds, also known as ornithophobia, is a somewhat common problem, and as expected there is a demon I've yet to discuss that aligns with that fear. But this next entity targets those with a much more specific bird-based fear. There are those rare few out there who have Anatidaephobia, the fear that somehow, somewhere, a duck is watching them. And Anatidaemus is constantly on the lookout for these unfortunate few. This demon appears as a stony-skinned, horse-sized duck, and believe me, anyone should prefer the idea of fighting 100 duck-sized horses to facing off with this beast. It has leering bug eyes that bore right into your soul, and it is invisible to any who do not have the fear it seeks. So to torment its victims, when it has located one, the demon will follow them from a distance and stand at afar, leering at them. Slowly, over the course of days, or even weeks, they'll notice it more and more, and their fear will grow and grow as the demon gets bolder with its distance, until it is eventually willing to stare them down from only a few yards away. They'll try anything to escape, running, leaving the country, even just looking away. But once the demon has targeted them, it is as though the poor soul can physically feel the eyes glaring into them. There has been one person to escape the demon's leer, a man named Gareth Larson, who'd long had the fear Anatidaephobia sought the scent of. A week into being stalked by the demon, he had an idea. Seeing the demon getting closer and closer each day, he realized he had to try something. So the next time he caught the eyes of the demon duck as it leered across a park at him one night, he simply leered back. He stared right into its menacing eyes and marched straight towards it. The duck moved towards him too, likely hoping to call his bluff, but this resulted in the two simply stomping right up to each other and having a stare-off in the middle of an open field. After minutes of this, Gareth's eyes grew red and bloodshot, but he refused to give up. Eventually, he started to notice that his foe was slowly shrinking. Anatidaephobia was getting smaller and smaller, weakened by the diminishing fear in its victim. Eventually, it got down to the size of a regular duck, and finally, unable to maintain its stare, the demon blinked. Gareth yelled "Ha!" at the demon and gave it a swift kick across the field. The demon waddled off and never bothered Gareth again, but it is still out there, seeking other victims, lurking, waiting, and of course, watching. That lore was a tough one to keep a straight face through, but like I've said in the last couple episodes, I like having one in here that's either funny or uplifting or something like that to kind of balance out these pretty unpleasant story-focused episodes. And surprisingly, this was the most requested phobia that I saw, which is funny because it's not actually a real phobia. I forgot what the origin of this was, and when I went looking into it, it turns out it was made in Farside Comics by Gary Larson, which I should have remembered because the second I saw the comic, I was like, oh yeah, of course, I remember this. I used to read Farside comics all the time. My grandpa always had tons of them up at the cottage, and I read them almost every time I was up there. I thought they were great. Because this was kind of the joke one of the episode, I put a little bit less thought into it. I still think it turned out really well, but I kind of wish I'd pushed the proportions of the eyes a lot more. After doing the clown one, I look at this and I kind of go, oh, I really could have played with the proportions more. But that really is just a side note because overall I do really like how this one turned out, and writing the lore for it was pretty fun. I hope you all enjoy our demon duck thing. Let's take a look at it. In a way, all fears come from within ourselves, as it's our mind's perception of external events and beings that brings us terror. But for some, the source of their fear physically exists within their own bodies, and within the bodies of all humanity. Some people are deathly afraid of blood. Even seeing a small trickle from a paper cut can cause massive anxiety, nausea, and even fainting. Seeing a large wound on themselves or others can be a traumatic event. So someone with this fear, seeing Hemophobia, is beyond a waking nightmare. This demon is a humanoid with perpetually gushing wounds all over its body. While demons don't technically bleed, the liquid that spills from this one is actually that of its past victims, and it keeps it circulating through its own body for use as a weapon. When a targeted victim is alone at night, Hemophobia will stumble towards them, appearing as a horrifically injured human. As it feels the anxiety spiraling in its prey, it will speed up, and the blood from its body will form together into a tendril or a tail that it will use to grab its victim. If they try to scream, it will spill blood into their mouth to quiet them, as it carries them off to a more isolated area. Once alone, Hemophobia will force the person to watch as more and more wounds open across its body and spill out the crimson liquid. Eventually, with its gravelly skin, it will then start to cut small wounds on the victim, forcing them to see their own blood spilled and merging with the blood of the demon. There is one proven way to beat Hemophobia, but it's something few of its victims have had the stomach to try long enough to succeed. The prey simply has to fight him, but every punch, kick, stab, or strike opens more and more wounds on the demon, which will drip more and more blood. So the potential victim has to hold strong their constitution and keep hitting the demon until they've shown that they won't back down. Once the demon is pummeled and truly wounded and needing to retreat, then they may be safe. It's not a task that's easy for someone with a fear of blood, but if they want to survive to see the sunrise, they'll have to keep fighting their inner and outer demon. Now, this was a demon I'd considered doing for all 3 of the episodes so far, and I even almost didn't do it for this episode. I actually started by doing a Cryophobia Demon because I thought it would be really cool to have like an icy polar bear that, that's the fear of cold. And I do like the idea of doing that one too, but partway through that drawing I was just like, I don't know, I really want to do the blood demon. And I was also a little bit concerned to do this one in the same episode as the clown demon because I knew I wanted this one to also be very human in shape. And I wasn't sure if there would be enough variety doing this and the clown in the same episode, but I think they definitely ended up looking very distinct from each other. The concept I knew I wanted to do was a very human sort of demon with just lots of wounds cut open in it. The blood tail was kind of a last minute thing that I just thought would be cool from a design perspective, and I knew I could work it into the lore in a fun way. Having its guts spilling out I thought would be pretty cool looking and kind of gross looking. And then one of the weirder parts of this one, I guess, is I made its legs almost look like they belong on a chubby person, and its upper body and arms look like a really skinny person. Honestly, I have no idea why I ended up doing that. I kind of just wanted to play around with the proportions. There's not really a reason in the lore for it to be that way. All the same, I'm super happy with how this one turned out. Hope you all like it as well. Let's take a look at the Hemophobia Demon. I'm calling it right here. I think this is the best episode in the series so far. I mean, it is kind of a tough call because I really like how all 3 episodes have turned out, but I think this might be my favorite. And I'm still undecided which I like better, this series or the Pokemon as SCPs. I mean, they're very similar, but both so much fun to do, and lots of people seem to be really enjoying them. So as always, thank you for all the suggestions for this series and that one, and for whatever other suggestions people have in the comments. I mean, this series was spawned by Crazy for a Day suggesting it. I never would have thought to do this series, so maybe you've got a suggestion that could end up becoming a series on the channel. And of course, if you're new here and you haven't seen the other Phobias as Demons episodes, maybe you should go check those out, if you want to. And make sure to subscribe for when the Christmas Demon episode comes out, in this same universe. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending the video on a positive note, which I've been trying to do with all of my videos lately, and feels especially necessary for an episode with so much creepy, monstrous stuff in it. And today I'll just very briefly summarize the story of the 4-minute mile, which I absolutely love. Because you see, it was long believed that it was impossible for a human being to run a mile in under 4 minutes. And then, in 1954, a man named Roger Bannister, he did it! In just under 4 minutes. Then, within 2 months, an Australian runner named John Landy did the exact same thing. And since then, over 1,400 different athletes have run a mile in under 4 minutes. Because a massively important part of doing anything is believing that you can. So when one person proved that it was possible, so many other people were then able to do it. So if other people are trying to tell you that something you want to do with your life is impossible, don't listen. Do it anyway. Achieve it, succeed at that thing, not just for yourself, but also to prove to everyone else that it's possible for them as well. Hope that was encouraging to someone out there. Thank you all for watching. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Friday. Goodbye.